channel. Yes, today's Thursday. We all know what that is. Croaker Drinker. We'll see what's up. But let's start with greetings before we get into the title. Hello, my name is Daniel. Obvious.
Guy in the chair.
He said it. He said it.
And yes, today's Croaker Drinker. But we'll hear what his thoughts are on the Supergirl movie that's coming out soon. Will it be a super flop? I don't know. We'll see. Let's sit back and enjoy.
You know, I hate to jinx it, but I do believe that 2026 has gotten off to a pretty good start so far. Yeah, there's been a few missteps along the way for sure, but shows like Night of the Seven Kingdoms and One Piece proved that there's still good TV being made, while Project Hail Mary delivered an excellent science fiction adventure that wasn't tied to some long-running franchise and didn't treat its audience like complete morons. What's a novel idea? Then the other day, I was reminded that, oh yeah, Supergirl's coming out soon. How best can I sum up my feelings about this movie? Well, you know when you go back to your hometown for the first time in years and you decide to meet up with some old high school buddies to reconnect over a few drinks, and it all starts out pleasantly enough, but before you know it, they're spouting the same shite they were talking about like a decade earlier, telling the same stories, griping about the same problems, even cracking the same tired old jokes. And even though the beers are flowing and you're trying to have a good time, you slowly come to the realization that, oh my god, these guys have literally never moved on in life. Well, such is my attitude to James Gunn's Supergirl, which ironically enough isn't actually directed by James Gunn, but might as well be if the trailers are anything to go by. I'm not exactly dreading it. I don't think it's going to be 2 hours of my life that I'll desperately want back by the time the credits roll, but just like that disappointing night out with your old high school friends who turned into not particularly interesting adults, I just can't summon up any real enthusiasm for it. And it seems I'm not the only one. Reactions to this movie so far have been muted at best. Nobody seems especially fired up for this one, and who can blame them really? James Gunn's DCU hasn't exactly bombarded us with quality entertainment to get excited about, and if the behind-the-scenes reports of poor test screenings, multiple reshoots, and a revolving door of composers are accurate, Supergirl's turning into a bit of a clusterfuck. But I'll talk more about that shortly. Believe that. Not to worry though, because if there's one group of people you can always count on to turn a potentially bad PR situation into a fucking nightmare, it's actors.
Yes.
In this case, the star of the show, Millie Alcock, who decided to put out the Supergirl fire with gasoline in a recent Variety interview where she declared, "It definitely made me aware that simply existing as a woman in that space is something that people comment on. We've become very comfortable having this weird ownership of women's bodies. I can't really stop them. I can only be myself."
What an odd thing to say.
I mean, you're a female actress playing an established female character. It's not exactly a controversial casting choice. I don't think anyone was up in arms about a Supergirl movie getting made. On the contrary, the bigger problem here seems to be, well, apathy. People just don't seem to give much of a shit one way or the other.
He's out of line, but he's right.
However, I was curious about this strange turn of events, and so I did a little digging on the latest news around Supergirl, and well, I believe I understand the problem now. The first issue is the test screenings. According to World of Real, which generally has a solid track record on stuff like this, Supergirl has been screened at least 8 different times, more than any other studio film from the past decades. At least 3 different endings have been used so far, with the latest version running at about an hour and 50 minutes, which features a more prominent role for David Corenswet's Superman. Now, call me crazy here, but it almost seems like they're trying to call in the big guns to prop up an IP that they know isn't going to stand on its own merits. According to the report, the reactions have been consistently mixed so far. Not disastrous, but not glowing either. Several sources mention that the action sequences don't quite land, and that the main villain, Krem, feels underwhelming. For context, I should probably add that test screenings traditionally skew more positive than actual audience scores, because test audiences are usually excited just to be there. They're getting to see the movie for free way in advance of everyone else, and so they tend to be a bit more forgiving than paying customers would be. In a nutshell then, a middling or even mildly positive test screening usually translates to a pretty bad end product. Clearly the studio knows this too, which is why they've done so many test screenings with multiple cuts and at least 3 different endings, all in a desperate search for something that works. In the business, this is what we call fucking panic time. It's when you abandon any real pretense of a cohesive artistic vision and just start throwing shit at a wall in the hopes that something will stick. It actually kind of reminds me of Brave New World, where they ended up shooting like 3 complete movies because they completely lost faith in what they were doing. And that doesn't exactly bode well. Then there's the soundtrack. With barely 3 months to go until release, Supergirl is now onto its 3rd official composer, Claudia Sarney, after the previous composer Tom Holkenborg left the project. And well, you don't need me to tell you that 3 months isn't exactly a long time to compose an entire film score, especially if test screenings are still ongoing and the final cut of the movie hasn't even been nailed down yet. Jesus, talk about throwing things together at the last minute. I mean, you kind of have to wonder what the point of a composer even is when you're talking about James Gunn's DCU by James Gunn. I'm willing to bet at least 90% of it will just be licensed pop tracks anyway, because that kind of thing is totally not played out after 10 years. So who even cares about the other 10%? Speaking of James Gunn's DCU by James Gunn, this is the other thing that's probably going to count against Supergirl when it hits theaters. A movie like this would have done just fine if it had a strong DC brand in place to support it, but let's be honest, it doesn't. The best way I can describe Gunn's approach to setting up an extended universe like this is retarded! Rather than get foundational characters like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman set up in their own solo movies and build out from there, Gunn's wasted precious time, resources, and fan goodwill on irrelevant shite that nobody except him even cares about. Superman was a movie reluctantly made out of necessity that barely scraped its way to profitability, and even that's debatable. Peacemaker Season 2 was a fucking disaster that either got ignored or completely shit on, and Creature Commandos was an animated show that nobody even cared about. The end result is a tired, meandering brand that feels like a bunch of disconnected side projects with no clear narrative drive and nothing for fans to get excited about. Which brings me back to young Millie's bizarre statement, because when you think about all of this, it all starts to make a bit more sense. If I was a cynical man, I'd say that Supergirl is probably going to flop at the box office, whether because of weak brand momentum, superhero fatigue, lack of interest in the character, just generally being a shit movie, or a combination of all of this stuff. I think the studio knows this too, and so they're getting their excuses lined up in advance. This is what we call laying the groundwork. No, you see, it wasn't a bad movie churned out by a studio with more flops to their name than a 400-pound diving instructor that arrived about 10 years too late to the superhero party and tried to appeal to an audience that's long since moved on. No, it's because of the sexism and stuff. People just aren't ready to see women in lead roles, and that's why this noble effort was tragically undone.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Sure, guys, whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess. But something tells me Supergirl is not going to set the box office alight. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Hey guys, I hope y'all like what he had to say. You want to hear more? Don't worry, he'll be back. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if the Supergirl movie will be a super duper or super flop. Why do actors and actresses have to stick their foot in their mouth when they talk about, oh, because I'm a woman, and then others because I'm black? No one cares, we just want to be entertained. But I don't know, that's just me. Me, I would just like a good movie. I mean, I kind of prefer Elizabeth's Supergirl, but hey, the middle is okay, I guess. I probably pronounced her name wrong, but oh well. If you like it this far and you want to see more, don't forget to like it, comment down below, share, then subscribe. But then I hope you had an awesome night and the rest of you was really well. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.